Friday afternoon edition of the Call Up. We're getting one more in this week. We owe you one, so sorry for a little bit of a later posting here, but we're going to catch up on some of the hot performers over the last couple weeks. Since we didn't really do it last week, we figured why not just talk about the guys that are swinging it or throwing really well through June so far. Of course, I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen from the ballpark in Indy. And Jack, you got a game coming up very soon, but you got to see the AAA debut of Braxton Ashcraft yesterday. How was that?
He looked good, man. And it was really impressive because I watched a pen that he threw in Indy before he was activated. And frankly, didn't look great. Something that I get to do is I get to be in the ballpark before anybody else. And I was like, okay, he was spraying his changeup and you told me, hey, that's the one pitch behind his changeup. I think it was the first one he threw yesterday was the classic high school kid changeup sails back to the backstop. And it's like, oh yeah, just didn't get over it. It's pretty interesting. But now that I have that negative aside, this guy was so comfortable in the strike zone. And that is something that I honestly hold in the highest regard when it comes to a guy making his AAA debut on the hill, because I think, you can get away with flirting with the corners at the lower levels. And then you get to AAA and you don't get those corners, and hitters are going to force you inside the strike zone because they have that automated strike zone. Do you have confidence inside the strike zone? There are way fewer pitching prospects than you would expect that have confidence inside the strike zone from the jump. And this dude carved 6 innings, 1-run ball. Only time he was tagged was back-to-back doubles, and both those guys went line hunting. It was a soft liner down the left field line and a ground ball down the right field line. He was dialed with the fastball. He was putting it wherever he wanted. Curveball, slider, both showed pretty well. But this guy, he was north, south, east, west with that heater. He was getting a ton of ground balls. He didn't rack up the Ks, but man, I was very, very impressed and almost surprised with how well it went.
Yeah, it's funny too. I was actually going to mention just before you got to the Ks thing, probably one of the more annoying lineups. I'm not saying it's a good lineup with Jacksonville, who he faced, but
they're going to
annoying at the top. You have two of the best bats of ball guys in the minor leagues, period, especially at the upper levels with Xavier Edwards and Javier Sanoja. So those are two guys that are really not going to strike out much at all. And then even a Jonah Bride, who doesn't really whiff at the AAA level. Troy Johnston doesn't really whiff at all at the AAA level compared to a lot of other guys that are hitting in the middle of the order. I thought he did a good job of pretty much pitching the contact, getting the whiffs when he needed it with the 4Ks, but just it seemed like so much weak contact, as you alluded to.
Yeah, 100%. It was weak contact, and I think that's because he stayed away from middle. And we see a lot of young arms make mistakes, middle. And the thing that jumps out to me is this guy did not look tired in the 6th inning. He's already beyond his previous career high in innings pitched. You got to remember, this guy had a dislocated non-throwing shoulder in 2019 that cut his 19 short. His first year of pro ball was 18. He was a 2nd-round pick in 18. 19, he was in short season ball. 20's COVID. 21, I think he was dealing with something else, right? And then 22 was TJ. So, it's crazy to me that this guy has never really gotten off the ground. And now he's an innings eater all of a sudden.
Yep.
In his first earnestly true year, full year in full season baseball. I get very, very impressed with his AAA debut.
And again, I'm not saying he's going to be better in the grand scheme, because I'm still hoping that Solomito is going to bounce back and start to see that velo come back. And I'm hoping Bubba Chandler finds the secondaries and stuff like that. But if you're the Pirates right now, you're looking at a Braxton Ashcraft, you're planning for 2025. Solomito and Bubba are luxuries that you're hoping can pitch their way into the fold. Braxton Ashcraft has pitched his way into the conversation. I know they got a lot of arms. They got to figure that all out. But in terms of a guy that is worthy of potentially being a big league starter as soon as this year and going into next year, this is a guy that was a top 10 prospect in that system, a good one for us going into this year, despite all of the injuries and the limited innings because of the talent. And now we're seeing when he's healthy, what he can do. Fastball average 96. He touched 98.5. And as you mentioned, not getting tired. Last pitch he threw of the day was 97 miles an hour. So, the arm looks healthy. He looks comfortable. He looks confident. And it's definitely a name with some helium, I think, to keep watching.
They have a pitching surplus, and I have no idea what they're going to do with the trade deadline. But names that you did not mention: Thomas Harrington, who looks really sharp in Double A at this point. Hunter Barco, who continues to look really sharp at the high A level.
Healthy.
Patrick Riley, who we were impressed by in spring breakout and has gotten off to a decent start in Greensboro. And Mike Burrows, in case you forgot, is kind of nasty. And he's been throwing live BPs. He's working his way back from Tommy John surgery. So, like, they have a gluttony of riches, an embarrassment of riches on the hill. They don't really have that offensively. They're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel offensively. So for them to be so deep in the pitching department and so thin in the offensive prospect department, I wonder if there's a way to almost make a swap, like blue chip pitching prospect for, 3 tier 2 hitting prospects. Like, it would just kind of even things out. And if you're thinking about draft, if you're forecasting the draft, I see no world where they take an arm. Zero world.
No, and we always talk about like not drafting on need and stuff like that. And teams say that they'll take the best player available. Sure. No way they take an arm. There's just no chance. There's no way. I'd be shocked.
If Chase Burns is on the board at 9 when they pick, they're not taking him.
That might be where you draw the line, maybe.
But dude, I mean, where's the space?
Yeah, that would be a fun problem, though. Would be a really fun one. Nothing else really before we get into the heat sheet, right? Like nothing else to really dive into. Oh, a couple rehabbers.
2 rehabs. Yeah, Ricky Tiedemann with the Blue Jays and Kobe Mayo with the O's. Where's Tiedemann rehabbing? Because Mayo's going to high A.
I believe at the complex, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, like at this point, I think anytime Tiedemann's first getting back onto the mound, you're going to want all the eyes on him, and you're going to want him, close to home base, which if it's not the big league stadium, I'd say home base is really the complex. So I'd imagine they're going to take some time there. Maybe not. Maybe he throws one and looks great, and he's already been throwing bullpens. I don't know. I haven't read any reports on that, but I think just being able to get him on a mound in a game setting, we'll have some data on that, soon enough. Is positive, but at this point, I find myself almost cynical with Tiedemann. It's like, yes, I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's, not missing a ton of time, but can he string together now, 10 consecutive outings where he is not missing a start and not, hitting the IL again or feeling a flare up or getting pulled early. I really hope so, because we know talent's not the issue here.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I don't know, at some point, the conversation turns into, how do we get through a full season where you stay off the shelf? And I don't know the answer to that. And frankly, there are a lot of guys that throw in a different way than Ricky Tiedemann, where we're going to start to have the same conversation. Jordan Wicks left with an oblique thing on Friday afternoon for the Cubs. He's a guy that we might have to start having that conversation. How do you get through a full year healthy? Because this is now 2 soft tissue issues that he's dealt with in 2024. That's a thing now in pitching that we need to come to terms with. And you have a guy as talented as Ricky Tiedemann. I'm not saying shove him into the closer spot a la Mason Miller. All I'm saying is if he's got to go short, he's got to go short. And maybe the 5-inning outing is out the window in 2024. And we revisit that topic in 25.
I'm with you there. I don't think a move to the bullpen necessarily means he's there forever. Look at what Garrett Crochet is doing right now.
Yeah. And he's at 85 innings already. Crochet going 7 and being north of 100 pitches. That's some alien life form stuff, but Tiedemann's kind of close to alien life form.
He's special. And so I think from that lens, I would consider it right now. And I think we'll obviously find out with how they use him moving forward. But I do think that if he has one more flare up, it would be silly not to move into the bullpen for the time being and just try to keep him on the field, build from there, and then, revisit the starter situation maybe later.
Yeah. Mayo, I don't think it's a loaded conversation. Good to see you back on the ball field. Get back to AAA and then get to the big leagues, man.
Yeah. fluky, broken rib, trying to go make a grab. Welcome back. Glad you're good.
Keep doing you, man.
Yeah, nothing else there. Just hopefully, his timing is not too thrown off from the time off. And given what he's consistently done, I think it won't take him too long to kind of get back in the swing of things.
So I know we've had this conversation with Torkelson, and listen, Torque is a Toledo mud hen right now, but we had the conversation with Torque where it's what can get thrown off timing wise? And we were shocked when he was thrown off. With Mayo, I kind of feel the same way. Tell me if you disagree. Like, I feel like there are very few things to get thrown off in that guy's swing.
Yeah, I mean, people would probably say, "Oh, what about that like hitch move that he has?" He does the same move every single time, and
Every
it's
time.
early, and it looks more complicated than it is, and that comes from
That's the
someone who like
thing.
we're always
Yeah.
talking about how much I hate hand loads and how like I think there should be a move like Griffin was talking about, like pinching his scap has been the cue for him to like have a smooth and rhythmic thing because you think about like Benny Montgomery or guys that like are really loading it with their hands. It's so hard to repeat that move exactly and time it exactly. It's not really the case with Mayo because to me, it almost looks like a shoulder pinch back that his hands just come along for the ride. I don't see it being too much of an issue at all.
And the earlier the better with that.
Yes.
And there are plenty of guys. Like I think about Ohtani with that hand move. He moves. It's just really early and it's really slow, so he can replicate the same thing. And he's arguably the best hitter on the planet.
Yes, which reminds me, James Wood just finally put that piece out. I'll link it in the episode description, breaking down all of the details. We've mentioned it on here, but I didn't want to do a 8-minute monologue and make Jack just sit there on all of the things that have made James Wood's swing better. But so instead, I just had you edit it for me, which I really appreciate.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a really good listener and nodder. I'm a really good nodder.
Yes.
So if you wanted 8 minutes right now, I'll sit here. I'll probably like have my phone like right here.
Yes.
And then just,
Yeah.
totally. Oh, that's great. No, I'm with you.
I already know your like auto-generated responses too.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
That's one of them. 100%.
And then if it's a negative connotation, toughy.
Toughy.
Yeah. Okay, Jack doesn't care what I'm saying. But no, so that is linked in the episode description. I know like it was fun for me because like I've told you, sometimes I kind of go into it. I know something is different, but I don't quite know what it is yet. And then I get really excited about that like aha moment when I find it. And I usually text you immediately and bother you about it. And there was multiple with Wood here because I think the adjustments that he made and it ties into what you were saying, slower and earlier versus a short, quick move that kind of had him feeling rushed and loading later. It just has totally changed everything for him from hitting secondaries to hitting pitches on the outer half. So that's linked in the episode description. I think you guys will really enjoy that. And I know Jack's about to say 100%.
100%. No, I texted you. I said, as good, if not better than Carroll. And I know that Corbin Carroll piece that you put out on justbaseball.com, kind of breaking down why he's struggling right now, got a ton of positive feedback. Yeah, like tons of positive feedback. And you shouldn't be shocked. It was a really good article, but like this one, and it might just be my prospect bias coming in, but I just it was like so clean and I walked away from it. And you guys know I'm not necessarily somebody that is the swing guru. Like I understood what would changed. And when you can walk away from an article understanding what changed and you can go watch a Rochester Red Wings game when he, is back healthy and on the field, like, and actually see that change taking place, that unlocks a level of baseball viewing that, you don't get often.
I appreciate that. I mean, that means a lot. So you can be mean to me the rest of the episode now, but yeah,
100%.
as of June 5th, he was back on the practice field. I don't know what the latest is. It was a hamstring tweak. I'd imagine the Nationals are probably like, oh, beautiful. Take your sweet damn time, James. Now people aren't going to bug us about calling you up. So I would be cautious with him anyways. There's no reason to rush him back with a hamstring thing. Big guy that flies. Like you don't want to get too cute there. But I also know that the Nationals are quite fine with that. I'm sure that it's going to take a little bit longer for him to get back. I think he should be back sooner rather than later, unless we get some sort of different update there. But other than that, we're ready for the heat sheet.
Yeah, I popped into Junior Caminero's Instagram live when he was just driving and, kind of vibing. Like he really wasn't saying anything either. He was just listening.
He went live while driving?
Yeah, but the phone was down. He wasn't looking at the phone. He wasn't reading the comments. He was looking at the road. But yeah, he went Instagram live while driving.
Of that?
I don't know. Just
guys bored. I mean, guys just wants to get back. I feel bad for him too, man. Like he probably should have got a big league opportunity, but then also like he's just been having all these soft tissue issues too.
Yeah.
I don't know we're not doctors. I always we'll preface that. But
I
like
am. I'm
you
working
are.
on
I
it.
know
Yeah.
you've read
Actually,
a
my
lot.
girlfriend is, and she kind of walks me through the medical jargon.
Yeah.
So I feel like
So
I'm a doctor now.
you got it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I mean, we haven't seen injuries in the past too much with him, but like this year, it just seems to like he continues to have these nagging things. It goes all the way back to spring training. I wonder if it's like a single thing that just keeps popping back up, because the body compensates, or like I'm just nervous that this might end up being a trend with him, and I hope not, because he is a specimen physically, and sometimes those specimen have a lot of muscular, things flare up.
He's also a freaky hard swinger. How do you get to
Yes,
those EVs? You swing hard as shit, and you either look like John Kensey Noel or you have unteachable bat speed.
yes, and
And
he's
that's
got that.
kind of him. And unteachable bat speed turns
A
into
lot
a
of
big
force.
whipping. Yeah, a lot of force, big whipping motion, and whipping motions hurt.
Yeah. And there's a lot of effort in that swing. And that's not a bad thing with the swing. Like
No.
we care about effort and delivery with the pitcher because of the liability there. Swings, we've talked about how that could start to be a thing that we see, but not nearly to the degree of it being an issue for pitchers the way it is. But it is something to monitor.
Speaking of heat sheet, and speaking of John Kensey Noel, speaking of John Kensey Noel, here's the heat sheet. We'll jump into it right now. And I do want to start with John Kensey Noel because I brought him up on the Just Baseball show
Mhm.
as a guy that I think can help right now. And there are two Guardians that I mentioned. And I did see a comment that said, we already watched Jonathan Rodriguez fail miserably when he was up 8 games. He was 3 for 23. That's not failing miserably over 8 games. But Jonathan Rodriguez and John Kensey Noel through the first, 14 days of June are two of the hottest hitters in minor league baseball at this point. Jonathan Rodriguez is second in total bases in all of minor league baseball, only behind Michael Hellman of the Twins organization. But Rodriguez, this Guardians outfielder, in 9 games is slashing 439, 467, screw walks, 902 slug. That's a 1369 OPS. And then John Kensey Noel, 10 games, slashing 422, 480, 711 with an 1191 OPS. And this guy, I don't know if you can query over the last 25, 30 games, but his numbers over the last 30 games or so, over the last month, absolutely insane. Noel looked like he was playing his way out of prospect status last year in AAA. He's fully back in there, and he's playing himself into big league status at this point.
He's playing his way into first base reps. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you? Like they're trying to find ways between left, first base, DH to get him in the lineup, potentially at the big league level. And we mentioned it on the Just Baseball show where, one of the subscriber mailbag episodes we had for the call up, we had a question about Noel going into the year. Like, where do we stand on him? Like, should his stock is just plummeted. Is he kind of doomed? Because I think there was a confirmation bias that came with John Kensey Noel. You look at the player and the profile, you say, there's no way that's going to work at the upper levels.
Yeah, he's going to K too much. Yeah.
He's going to K too much. He's too aggressive. Where is he going to play? Blah, blah, blah. And all valid questions. But the contact rates had always been pretty good. The problem for him had always been the approach had undermined that. And he's one of the main reasons, too, why another perfect example why we do the hit tool and the plate discipline side. Because his hit tool wouldn't be a 30. Even
probably
though people
50,
might think that,
right?
It'd probably be closer to a 50 when you look at the contact standpoint, but the approach would actually be a legit 30. The plate discipline would be a legit 30. And just to show you, like, the field of hit is solid enough to where when he cuts that chase down, like he was chasing at a 40+% clip through the first 30 games of the season. And then over his last 20, he's cut that chase down to 33%, which still is way too high. And even in that span now, his strikeout rate's down to 14%, and he's hitting 407 across that stretch. And by the way, the contact rates usually come with that. They'll improve when you take better swings at better pitches. You have just better swing decisions. 87% in-zone contact rate across that span. So, I mean, this is a guy that hits the living crap out of the ball. Of course, he's ultimately, like, if he hits enough to play every day, he's a DH, or a guy that you just put in a corner and just pray that the ball doesn't get hit to him too much.
I will say it's better than Schwarber and Castellanos. I think you see this guy's build. He passes the eye test offensively with flying colors. He's a huge human being, as big a human being as you're going to see.
22 still, by the way.
I know. An older 22, though. Don't give him that much credit. Older 22.
Right.
22.
23 in a month.
Yeah, 22 repeating AAA. Come on, he's fine.
Yeah.
But like he passes the eye test with flying colors offensively. Defensively, you see a guy built like that, and it's like, oh, if he's not at first base, he's a liability. He moves better than you would expect. And I'm not calling him a good defender in a corner, but I really don't think he's a gaping hole in a
Okay.
corner. I think he can hold it down. Obviously, he's got a cannon for an arm. I mean, how that guy could never have a noodle ever,
No,
but he gets to more balls than you would expect a guy like that too. So
that's good.
I really don't think he's a Schwarber or a Castellanos.
Really, the only missing piece I think for him to before he gets to like the opportunity to play in the big leagues, and I think just for the chance to translate is that approach still though. Like that chase rate's got to get below 30%, and because pitchers are going to take advantage of that. He's going to get himself out too much
for sure. But can I hang on the in zone contact thing too? 87% in zone contact, you said, right?
Over the last 20, yes.
Over the last 20. Okay. Typically, what you look over the full season.
Over the course of the season, he's at 78% in zone contact, which is fine for a guy of his power. Overall contact rate is 73%. Again, fine for a guy of his power if you're walking.
The thing that separates him is some of that contact. Like it doesn't always come on A swings, and you're not going to have an in zone contact at that high a rate if you only have one swing. This guy has a B swing.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that makes him different than so many AAA players is that B swing can still pop a 105.
Yep. And that's the beauty of it. And by the way, you asked for the last 30 games, 364, 436, 661 slash line. It's 1,097 OPS. And on the season, 90th percentile of 108. And I honestly think that's lower than it will be if he continues to cut down on that chase, because you get your A swing off more consistently. Those 105s are 111s or 118s, like we've seen him pop this year. It's close to 80 grade power. I think could be 80 raw. And I think there's a lot to like here in terms of the offensive profile. But what's weird with him too, last thing, reverse splits guy, which I wouldn't expect. Lefties against lefties is 670 OPS. Against righties, 1,000 OPS on the course of the season.
I wonder if changeups
last year. Yeah, it must be changeups.
I bet it would be changeups. Like I bet he's like, oh, fastball, and then he's just out in front.
Yeah, what's funny is last year actually hit lefties better. So I think at the AAA level, seeing more changeups, and what we talked about, remember with Drew Thorpe, where I was like, usually the changeup is great because it's a chase pitch, right? Yeah. You get guys to get themselves out or swing over it. With Thorpe's, it's so good because it's an in zone whiff pitch, and I think pitchers right now, they're getting him to chase the changeup. What do you think his chase rate is on changeups this year?
Very high.
Take a guess.
Man, high I know overall is like 45%.
That's borderline egregious.
Borderline egregious, right? Like Javi Baez runs an overall chase rate at about 45%.
I think Javi runs one at 50.
Okay, so I know like Tim Anderson and Luis Robert were running one last year around 50%. Like 45%.
So you were right. Javier Baez is 46 this year.
Yeah, there you go. And I think Luis Robert's like mid 40s too.
Yeah.
I bet his chase rate is 53.
Wow. So that was pretty good. So chase rate on the changeup alone. Sorry, I'm switching back off of Javi Baez real quick.
Yeah.
On the changeup alone is, I believe it was 52. Wow. I'm waiting for it to 52% on the changeup. Like that's a problem. And that might be a pitch recognition issue, which that totally does you in. And that's where it gets really hard to analyze these players. Cause like, is it an approach or a pitch rec thing? You got to like talk to the player to be able to know that. Or see, but the slight decline that we've seen makes me feel like it might be an approach thing. And I hope that's the case, because if it's pitch rec, then yeah, I mean, that's tough to overcome.
Yeah. Real quick on Jonathan Rodriguez. Do you know much about him? I feel like he's a pop-up. I know. I feel like he's a pop-up in a similar way to Oscar Gonzalez, where he was producing. He got to triple. He produced. Got a big league shot. He was not great. But Oscar Gonzalez, before he got his first big league shot, was not a guy that was considered a top 10 prospect by any stretch in this organization. He was just like good enough. And he was one of the few power hitting prospects, quote unquote, that Cleveland had. And Jonathan Rodriguez, I think, has followed a pretty similar path to that, but this guy hammers the ball, especially the other way.
Yeah. I mean, again, a guy that I really wasn't on my radar much, but the EVs are pretty nuts. The contact rates are palatable and much lower chase. So he got what he got. You said a very brief cameo. He's a guy that could ultimately hit enough. Like there's intrigue here for sure. I mean, 90th of 108 too, and in zones above 80%. Like I'm always going to be interested in that. It's not like he's 28; he's 24. So yeah, I mean, he's been performing.
Yeah. Guy that we want to talk about that you did mention on the Just Baseball show real quick was Bryce Matthews with high A for Houston. Bryce Matthews, a former Nebraska Cornhusker, 9 games so far in the month of June, slashing 447, 533, 947. He's got 6 homers in 9 games. He's also 5 for 6 in the stolen base department. That's what he does. He's like, we mentioned the 2020 season that he had in his draft year. It's not 30-30, but like this guy could probably be 20-20 at the big league level, huh?
Hey, it looks like he has the ingredients to be. And what's interesting is I think this is right off of an injury too, right? Where he was out. I think the last time we saw him play in high A before he returned in the beginning of June was end of May, or actually, sorry, end of April. Has a handful of rehab games. I think the first rehab game was exactly a month later. And then he returns to high A Asheville on June 1st. And basically since he returned to high A Asheville, he, as you mentioned, he's been on another planet. And in those 9 games, 6 homers. And almost every single game except for 2. So 7 of the 9 games have been multi-hit. He's had a multi-homer game in that stretch. I mean, he's been doing a little bit of 2 multi-homer games in that stretch. He's stealing bags, as you mentioned, 5 for 6 in that department. The question had been the swing and miss. And I still think that that's a question for sure. But he's hedging that more and more. He pulverizes fastballs. He recognizes breaking balls well enough to where he's able to hedge some of the swing and miss with a sub 20% chase rate. And we're seeing the ingredients here of, I think, a guy that could have plus to maybe plus and at like, almost plus raw power. I think it's closer to like a 65 grade. And then the ability to walk. You take some pressure off of what might be a below average hit tool. He might move to third, and they're already starting to give him more reps there. But I think there's enough juice there, and then the speed and other ingredients that he brings to carry that weight that comes with needing to slug at third. I think he could easily do that.
He shouldn't be considered, a trade candidate. Although I know that Houston wants to buy. Do you see the report on Friday morning that Dana Brown wants 2 starting pitchers?
Outrageous.
They just released their first baseman.
To me, it only makes sense if they go and get somebody with control like a Fetty that also sets them up for next year. Or otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, and they don't have the capital to go get a Crochet or a Luzardo. Like, they don't have that, frankly.
No.
Matthews arguably became a top 3 prospect in their organization with this June.
I agree. And also, you know that Bregman's going to be gone. DeZenzo's been hurt the whole year. He's another guy actually that was back on rehab. And then I've been
down.
Yeah, I think we can't keep up with every single report, but just looking at the game logs, he played the 8th and we haven't seen him play since. So he already had his hit tool questions. Very, very talented player that could be a part of their future. And we've talked about it, fringe top 100 guy. But now a lost year for him for the most part, or at least a big portion of it's going to be lost. He's yet to play above the AA level. I mean, it would be, obviously you can't trade him now. Bryce Matthews is that other third baseman and might now be catching up to him or surpassing him.
Yeah.
They don't have that capital. I'm with you. Like, you're not going to trade a Loperfido. Like, that doesn't really make much sense.
No, and you're not going to trade an Arrighetti. Like, Arrighetti's already been exposed at the major league level, and you hope he just goes through the growing pains with you and grows into the pitcher you wanted him to be.
Maybe
and
a Melton?
You get to Melton and Baez. You're not trading Luis Baez. So then, like, it's just Melton. It's just Melton. And, like, you're not getting a pitcher that's going to make you a World Series contender with just Melton. And I know you like Melton. I like Melton. But, like, Jacob Melton headlining a Luzardo deal, like, Peter Bendix hangs up.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, they'd have to really put something together there. So it'll be fun to see how they go about it. They weren't afraid to deplete the prospects last year, and maybe they'll do the same again this year.
We'll see what happens. I've got 4 Rays. You want the Durham Rays or you want the Bowling Green Rays?
Let's go with Bowling Green.
Okay. Not to mention Chandler Simpson, who's been balling again. Colby was just texting me about Chandler Simpson today, actually. I was just like, yeah, man, I think he's my favorite guy in minor league baseball. Bowling Green first. That's the duo of Braden Taylor and Xavier Isaac. 11 games for Isaac in June, slashing 395, 480, 674. That's an 1154 OPS. That's really good. 4 bags for Xavier Isaac in 11 games with 3 doubles, 3 homers, 9 driven in. Braden Taylor, 10 games in the month of June, 311, 367, 622. He's got 9 extra base hits in 10 games in June. Those two are ready to be biscuits, man. I don't know what's taking so long.
It's a little bit of a logjam. Then Bobby Seymour swinging it at the level above.
Yeah, but is Bobby Seymour going to stop Xavier Isaac? Come on.
He's think. I know. It's just the way the Rays go, right? It is really interesting to me. I've been asking the same thing. I've been begging to see Xavier Isaac at the AA level, and don't rush him. Okay, fine. Then he's just gonna have 1,000 OPS in high A all year and not really be that challenge. He is striking out still a little bit more than you like to see. So, maybe that's the one thing that they're kind of waiting to see cut down. And like, even over his last 20 games, it's still in the upper 20% range. So like, I get that lens, but he's just getting his all the time. So it's hard for me to say like, we should wait and just let him cut down the Ks in high A. Like let him struggle a little bit in double. We just talked about James Wood. And that was a big part of the piece that I dove into, was like, James Wood went to the drawing board at the end of the season during the offseason to clean things up, because I don't think he realized that he had some inefficiencies until he faced AA competition, to where those inefficiencies got exposed. And that's why he went in the offseason and made those adjustments and got himself to a position where, now he's making way more contact and looks like the best version of himself. So I'm sure they'll do that with Isaac in the second half of the season, but it seems like they're just not in too much of a rush to do so.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the balance beam, man. Like, it is a really tough line to straddle when you want, confidence to be high for your top prospects, but you also want them to be challenged. It's really hard to find that mesh. Confidence is sky high for Isaac right now, I'm sure. But it doesn't look like he's being challenged. So you get to AA, like, I don't know if the confidence goes down. Like, you got to find out, I think.
I'm with you. And I think sooner rather than later, we finally will. What are the numbers for Taylor through the last?
Braden Taylor in his last 10 has 9 extra base hits. 311, 367, 622 is a 989 OPS. He's 5 for 5 in the stolen base department in his last 10 games too.
Yeah, I mean, that'll play. I saw him even drop down like a bunt for a hit. Like, he's doing a little bit of everything. The power is not, I think, as prevalent as maybe some were hoping when he was coming out of the draft. And I think he started to tap into a little bit more, but I do think it puts a little bit more pressure on the hit tool. So to see him doing this now, I think is really encouraging to see, like, okay, the hit tool is coming along. There's a guy that's going to, be able to, I think, carry that weight on that side, because again, the EVs are kind of fringy, and that does, put more pressure on the hit tool that was never plus. So it's nice to see him trending in that direction. But what stands out to me with him is the approach being really good as well. And I think that also helps that overall offensive profile.
2 Durham Bulls. One guy that a conversation gets more and more complex, and the other guy is strictly fun. And I love that he pops up on this leaderboard. Ronnie Simon is the fun one.
Let's go.
Curtis Mead is the interesting conversation here. Curtis Mead at this point in June, 11 games in Durham, slashing 349, 429, 605. So he's got 5 extra base hits, 3 homers, 9 driven in. Ronnie Simon, 11 games, slashing 350, 381, 650, 3 doubles, 3 homers, 8 driven in. Start with Simon, because that's the quicker conversation. He's fun. It's fun to see him hot. I don't think that there's a big league opening in Tampa for him, but he's going to be a big leaguer for another team at some point very, very soon. And I just wonder how he gets to the other team.
It's funny, unselected in the Rule 5, when we talked about it, I'm like, I'm taking the over 1 WAR as a big leaguer, and people are like, oh, well, that's a low bar. He didn't get picked in the Rule 5. Nasim Nunez did. Like, I would have went with a Ronnie Simon if I was the Nationals over a guy like him. 90th percentile this year of 105 miles per hour. Like, for such a compact guy, he hits the ball hard. His approach was incredibly frustrating as well. A similar thing where it's like cut down on the chase. It's not great, but palatable. He's got it under 30%. The bat to ball has always been fine. And we're looking at a guy that like from both sides of the plate is good enough. Like I always love the left-handed swing being better, and then the right-handed swing is good enough. He can run. He's versatile enough to where they're putting him in the left field a little bit now. I don't know if he ends up being a trade chip for them or what they do. But like if he's unprotected again in the Rule 5, like I feel like he's gonna get taken, right?
I would think so.
How often does that happen? You don't get taken in the first Rule 5 and then you're exposed again and you get taken in another one?
I bet it happens more often than we would expect.
Yeah. We'll see. I think there's concern about how he can hit secondaries and stuff like that. But when you have that speed, you hit the ball as hard as he does, like give this guy a shot.
Yeah. The log jam is really pissing me off with Curtis Mead, if we're being totally honest. And I think Mead, Aranda, and Miguel Vargas are all Spider-Man memeing each other. Like it's a three-way Spider-Man meme, and it's just like, what do we got to do here? And I know Aranda has struggled in Durham, and he's in Durham right now, but I mean, Mead is killing in Durham. Yeah. Gets up, struggles, killing. Miguel Vargas just got optioned again. He's killing in Oklahoma City. Gets up, struggles, goes down, killing again. I feel so bad for these guys. Go trade Mead for controllable pitching. He can absolutely still headline a package.
I agree. And maybe I'm thinking about the Marlins in that instance. Like, could there be a better matchup? Like, he could play for them tomorrow and yes. be a part of what they're trying to do there.
He could hit third for them tomorrow.
So my concern with him stands with just the path is unique, and he does like to go the other way. I think there's some inefficiencies with the path that probably aren't going to get rectified till maybe the end of the year, or maybe they find something there. But it seems like to do damage, he has to elevate and do damage. He usually has to go the other way. And then when he tries to pull it, it's out and around and it's on the ground. So I think he's really stuck in between right now. And then big league pitchers are busting him inside and he just can't quite turn it around the same way. I think he's quick enough, but I just think that there's a groove in that swing that is getting exposed at the big league level. And then you get to AAA. And, there's something we're talking about, even with like Matt Mervis, where it's like, he'll have a good game in AAA and he'll be frustrated because he'll feel like he just capitalized on mistakes. Yeah. And he's like, that's not going to play at the big leagues. Mervis is also holds himself to as high of a standard as really just anybody I've met in professional baseball. But there is validity to that. Like, he's been to the big leagues multiple times. He knows what he needs to do to get there. And it's not just hitting home runs, because, okay, yeah, you're going to get your mistakes, but how do you combat being pitched to your weaknesses?
No,
and I think that's where Mead's stuck too.
That's the thing. So the macro, like, he needs to hit homers to get to the big leagues, but on the micro, what do you need to do to stay there? Mm-hmm. And that is the thing that a lot of guys, I think, struggle to identify.
Well, it's even harder when you're playing for a team that is trying to compete and you don't get the runway. Yeah. If you get the runway there, you got so much time to work through that, figure it out. Every day you're taking BP with the big leaguers, you're taking BP with the big league, coaches, and you can work through that. And you can, just continue to get those at-bats under your belt. But instead, you get to the big leagues, you're trying to stick there. You're just trying to catch home runs and perform. And I think it's less of a focus on what's going to translate to help you in the grand scheme, because you got to try to balance those two. And it's got to be really hard. And I think that's where Mead's kind of stuck right now.
And at the end of the day, man, like, who's the coach pulling aside after BP to take a peek at the iPad? Curtis Mead or Randy Arozarena? Like Ian Happ or Matt Mervis? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're going to go try and get their $10 million man right, or their leading jersey seller right. And I can't blame them, because they're a team that, again, is trying to really compete here. And yeah, every team wants to build a sustainable product, but if you can win now, that's always priority one for coaches too, who have a much shorter leash than executives. That's just how that's going to work. You need immediate ROI. So
yeah, I will say, I think he does. I think if he keeps performing, I do think he is a candidate to get moved, because you talk about the logjam. We're seeing Braden Taylor perform. We're seeing other guys perform with more versatility. I think Mead is the odd man out potentially here.
Yeah, I think so. And Aranda, like, I've got no idea, but he's been struggling, so we're not talking about him. I've got two Orioles. You want the high A guy or the double A guy?
High A.
Mac Horvath.
Ooh.
9 games in June. Mac Horvath, who was drafted last year out of Boston College.
Mac Horvath. That
No.
doesn't sound right.
Carolina?
That sounds right. Yeah, I think it was UNC.
I think it was UNC. Honeyman was BC.
Yes.
Honeyman was BC. I think Horvath was UNC. Mac Horvath, 9 games in June, slashing 359, 432, 692. 7 extra base hits, including 3 homers, driven in 8, 6 for 6 in the stolen base department. It is 9 games. He's dynamic, huh?
I think the athleticism was probably one of the more underrated aspects of him, because you see him playing more third base, and I don't think people really realize that, like, oh, this guy can motor and this guy can do some things. I think the other aspect is, like, yeah, he can run into some baseballs, and we saw some power output, but he honestly is a good field to hit. And I think we're looking at a much more well-rounded prospect than maybe I was even anticipating. Yes, he's doing it at high A. I really want to see him as a college guy do it at double A. And he did get off to a slow start, but heating up now, settling in and doing things, across the board, and finally seeing him get into the pull side a little bit more. I think he's still trying to find that identity as a hitter, because I think he's realizing, like, the power doesn't quite play the same with Wood, and the EVs aren't, plus, but they're average, and he elevates consistently. So I still think he can. We talk about outslugging the EVs. He seems like the perfect candidate for that. I think ground ball rates, below 35%. Can you balance that, slug enough, but still have that hit tool come along? The chase is low. I think we're seeing a guy that's finally kind of figuring out who he is as a hitter at the professional level. And, I think double A will be the big challenge here, but I think he's starting to prove that he's too comfortable for high A now.
Yeah. I didn't appreciate an outfield with Horvath and Honeycutt enough in real time. Like, they were both high efficiency base stealers, were hitting homers. I wish I watched more 2023 UNC baseball, but Horvath seems like, again, another one for Baltimore. Start trading guys. Please.
Please.
Double A guy, can I interest you in some Samuel Basayo love?
Always.
Basayo in 11 games in June with Double A Bowie, slashing 325, 372, 650. 7 extra base hits, 4 doubles, 3 homers, 8 driven in. He's punched out 8 times in 44 ABs. I'm not saying Norfolk, but, like, maybe.
I think that the only thing that's really missing for Basayo here is the receiving. Like, everything else has come along.
And like, that's, you can't really work on that. I mean, I guess you can. But it doesn't matter in AAA.
No. Well, maybe there's better coaches there, because the Orioles, I think, from what I understand, like, they're not the best in terms of getting their guys right, receiving wise. I think compared to others, Adley just always had it. But if you look at, like, a lot of the other development of their catchers, like, that's been an area where the Orioles have been a little bit deficient. But the thing that really stands out to me is he got off to that slow start. He had an injury. What was it? Like what was the injury? Was it to his arm? Wasn't there like an arm? It was an arm issue, like a stress reaction, something like that with his arm that obviously is going to impact his swing. Got off to that slow start. Through the first 15 games, he was OPSing 552. And then now we're seeing him just become Samuel Basayo again. I think he's probably feeling good physically, and I think he's just settling in now. And I mean, he's hitting the ball incredibly hard. He hits balls out of the zone. It just continues to look like that Rafi Devers, comp that we've talked about, where the way that you brought that up with the way that he can just, like, hit balls out of the zone. And he's been doing more of the same. Every time I go check in on the home runs that he's been hitting, there's been several outside of the zone. He has one that he clipped, like, it was a slider that I think was 5 inches below the zone. And then he has another one from Carson Ragsdale, a changeup, just a pitch that most guys just auto take ball. It was a horrible pitch. 89-mile-an-hour changeup that was 5-6 inches above the zone. Basayo said, you know what? I can hit this thing out. 115 to the pull side. So, I mean, what he can do on pitches that he probably shouldn't even be swinging at helps, hedge, I think, the concern about his high chase rate. And what I love is it's all fields too. He's going the other way. He's going pull side. Like, he's really coming into his own as a hitter.
If you tell me that I can watch a Norfolk lineup, and, oh, by the way, Kyle Stowers is up and he's OPSing 790. It's almost like I told you, but Stowers is up. Norby is back down. If you tell me that I can watch a minor league baseball game that will, after Mayo is done with the rehab, feature Basayo, Mayo, Holiday, Kerstad, Norby, and I could get McDermott on the hill. I'm not missing a pitch.
And Fabian ain't far behind, I think, either.
Fabian's not far behind. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. I mean, that they go right back to like that early part of the season. I mean, and Holiday is going to be there for a little bit. And now there's like a different level of intrigue. It's like not, oh, like let's watch the best prospect in baseball do his thing. It's let's watch a guy who's been one of the best prospects in baseball for a little bit now. Like, let's see if he can make that progress. And that's also very fun to monitor and see what he's working on and see how he's coming along.
Yeah. Couple more guys. I do want to give Joe Mack a teensy bit of love because this guy's been hitting the crap out of the ball for Pensacola. And that is not an easy place to hit the crap out of the ball by any stretch. But Joe Mack in 10 games for the Blue Wahoos, slashing 308, 386, 744, 5 homers in 10 games so far in the month of June. He's still sneaky young, right? He's what, 22?
I think he's 21.
I mean, come on now. Like, I'm not saying he's the future of the catching position for the Miami Marlins, but this guy had a ton of talent. Like, that's what made him a very early round pick. He was the second round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
I think compensation round.
Okay, so he was probably something
like Comp A, I think.
Comp A. I can find it right now. Let's go to the bio. But Joe Mack, you were.
I think it's important too, like to note that, you know, I still have some concerns of whether he's going to hit enough and, you know, he should probably walk a little bit more. But this is a dude that was a high school catcher from the Northeast. Sometimes it's a slower burn with those guys. We already know high school catchers are volatile and one of the riskiest profiles you can ever draft. Then the Northeast kid as well. I mean, he's 21. Like, he's still very young. He's going to be 21 up until December. So I think this is maybe a guy that's starting to figure it out. You have a tangible adjustment also in the box, got his hands higher. I think he's found, you know, his base a little bit more. The EVs are above average, and you know he's elevating as a catcher, left-handed hitting. Like, you can't say he's the future of the position just yet because he's going to need to prove that he can hit enough. But he's the best damn chance they have right now of anybody within the organization. I think Will Banfield's 0 for his last 32 in AAA. Joe Mack is there pretty much right now. If you look at the organization, their only guy that you could look at and say he has a chance to be an everyday catcher at the big league level. And I think he's increasing those chances every time we see him do this.
And he's putting together a really solid year between, I think, 2 weeks in high A and then the rest of the year in double A to this point. He was 31st overall in 2021. High school catcher, you mentioned, from the Northeast, drafted in 2021. It was too early to write him off. But
probably had a senior season bang, too.
Yeah, good. Junior year.
Or junior year bang. Yeah, I mean,
junior year bang. Yeah, that's crazy. Also, Miami Marlin. I don't know if we ever mentioned that. But yeah. I've got a couple more hitters and then just a handful of pitchers. It's really tough because, like, you got max 2 starts under your belt. Michael Arroyo, valid or not? Michael Arroyo is hot right now. Mariners prospect in low A. Arroyo, 11 games in Modesto, an 1107 OPS, slashing 283, 411, 696, 5 homers, 9 driven in 11 games with Modesto. What's going on?
Can I say, like, not really?
It's okay. Yes, absolutely. That's why I asked.
I think he's a good prospect. I think we talked about it when we went through the Mariner system. 19, you know, plenty of time to work through some of these things. And he hasn't really had that adversity hit him to where he needs to make any adjustments because he feasts on less experienced pitchers.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the ability to hit fastballs. And the craziest part is about, like, through this stretch, you mentioned how good the numbers are. Would you say the OPS was like a 980?
Arroyo in this 11 game samples 1107.
11. Okay. What do you think he's hitting against fastballs in that span? 4-seam fastballs in that span.
I don't know. I don't want to like
111, 304, 278.
So what's he's just getting a bunch of hangers and he's killing them
and killing them. And like, I don't want to like use that as a way to just like disparage him, but we know he's the guy that kind of cuts himself off with his stride and fastballs up and in, crowd the hell out of you. It's something that if he figures out, like, clearly we see he can crush mistakes. He is sneaky pop for a small guy and pretty good feel to hit. I think he's a good prospect, but he's getting away with stuff that I don't think he's going to totally get away with at higher levels.
Okay, that's fair. One more guy, another catcher. Edgar Caro of the White Sox. And I know that you mentioned him in the prospect report, but this guy's hitting the crap out of the ball right now. 1333 OPS over his last 11 games. That's a slash of 488, 553, 780. He's punched out 6 times in 47 plate appearances with Birmingham, 3 doubles, 3 homers, 7 driven in 11 games. Edgar Caro, listen, like, I'm watching the White Sox run out a tandem of Martin Maldonado and Corey Lee.
Future superstar Corey Lee.
Future, was it star or superstar?
Star? Star. Future star.
Even star is a bit of a stretch, I think. But all that being said, Caro, I think you should get to Charlotte very soon, right? And, I have no problem with pitchers skipping triple for the White Sox.
Yeah.
Like, I have zero issue with Thorpe going from double. I know Nastrini was in Charlotte. He got hammered. I know Cannon has kind of bounced back and forth. He got hammered in Charlotte. That's a brutal place to pitch. And that doesn't do anything for your confidence. So pitchers, I think Iriarte doesn't stop in Charlotte. I don't think Schultz is up this year. I think he's going to spend the entire year in Birmingham, but I don't think Schultz goes to Charlotte for a start next year.
Yeah.
I see a good opportunity to move Caro now that he's been in Double-A for the last year and a half, 2.5 years, right?
Yeah.
Rocket City for a whole year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So 2.5 years we're going on of him being in Double-A. Let's get him to a hitter-friendly bandbox.
Yeah.
And let's get him confidence for that September call-up that we feel like is inevitably coming.
And he's the perfect candidate for a guy whose power I think would really tick up in that environment, because he's a guy that hits it like just over the wall. And he has sneaky pop, but it's just over the wall. He's a guy whose power would be impacted by environment more than others. Just on a point of the stretch that he's on, 13 straight games with a hit. He had a stretch where he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive multi-hit games. He's had it really come together for him offensively. And it felt like it was only a matter of time after what we saw him do in the second half of last year. I think he was a little bit of a victim of just what was happening in the Southern League overall. And I think we're seeing him now really settle in. Got you.
I guess a couple arms that I want to talk about, but before any of that, I do have to mention our friends at GameTime. I've had a great time using GameTime, and GameTime is now an official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball and Minor League Baseball. You want Indianapolis Indians tickets? You want Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp tickets? You want Fort Wayne Tin Caps, Jersey Shore Blue Claws, whatever you want, man. Go get them using GameTime. Use our promo code JUSTBASEBALL, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account at GameTime and use all of their excellent features. All-in pricing, panoramic seat views, whatever you like with GameTime. I just love how simple the interface is. And redeem code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I got to tell you about pitchers here. And
I'm actually disgusted real quick that you did not mention Cole Carrick hitting 455 over his last 11 games. Rocky's prospect, by the way. Don't need to get into it beyond that, but that's it. I'm just disgusted.
You led the Just Baseball show with that. So
yeah.
I don't know. I guess I stayed away. Did you buy another card? Is that why you're bringing them
No,
up?
I did not. No, but I am going to go send the out of 5 to get graded.
Understood.
I was nervous. I was like, why did I buy that card?
So I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel for pitchers here, but there is a guy that has caught my eye in Double-A for Washington that I just don't really understand. And it's a 24-year-old in Double-A. His name is Brad Lord. And I don't know if he's popped up in any queries for you so far this year, but Brad
I would
Lord,
remember that name.
in 11 starts, this guy has a 1.55 ERA. I mean, he's been killing. And Lord, in the month of June at this point, 19 innings, 20 Ks, 5 punch-outs. Opponents hitting $172, 2 earned runs against him in 19 innings. Like, again, I hold off on pitchers through like 6, 7 starts. If you're a 24-year-old, if you're older than the average guy at your position in that level of affiliated baseball, 24-year-old in Double-A. It's like, okay, so what? He's had a good 6 starts. Now it's a really good 11 starts. And I don't really know anything about him, but do the Nats have a guy here in Brad Lord?
I'm watching. I didn't know anything about him either. I'm watching right now. So I saw the in zone whiff rate and I'm like, oh, this on the fastball. I'm like, oh, this has to be like just a ridiculous ride fastball. And I go to look at just the shape of it. Not at all. So I'm going to send you a video after this. You're going to love it. He like pretty much looks like he's playing catch, like short stride, minimal extension. It's from this like low 3/4 release, and it just runs like this one I'm watching that he just got by Judd Fabian. 3 inches of vertical movement, 18 inches of horizontal. It's almost like a Paul Skeens splinter, to be honest. Like it is, but like in a fastball form. So he's getting a ton of whiff on that. It's really just dominating with fastballs. We're looking at like a Lance Lynn light here, maybe. So they might have something here. I don't know. I got to watch like a full start and see how he like sequences and turns lineups over with just 2 fastballs kind of. But it looks like this could work.
So I was keyed in on Brad Lord 3 weeks ago, I want to say. There was a really interesting MLB TV free game of the week that was on, like the featured minor league game or game of the day, because I know they have a different one every day. And I was just really interested to watch Cruz and House and Hassel when Hassel was healthy at the time. So I turned it on and Brad Lord was pitching, and it's same way that I've come across Jaden Ham with Detroit, and he didn't come up in like the query of hottest pitchers.
He's an
June.
IBB guy too, though.
I know, but like it's 2 guys that I just did not, frankly, know existed, and they've burst onto the scene in 24.
Yep, that's why I love the pitching side too. Is like you just never know what you're going to stumble upon.
Yeah, like sometimes you get Jonah Tong and Tugboat Wilkinson.
Yep, who Tugboat just hit 100 Ks as a pro already.
I know,
it's pretty nuts. Sean Sullivan, by the way, 8 innings again. He's got 8 innings in high A Rockies prospect, 1 run, no walk, 7 Ks. He's doing that in the upper 80s too.
Okay, so can I ask you, yes or no? Does Sean Sullivan debut this year? I know.
I think no way.
I am gonna go. Yes.
Palmquist is ahead of him. I'm gonna say no.
Dude, they ran out that kid Chivilli that I mentioned. Like, the Rockies snuck a guy that I've never heard by me in the major leagues. Again, that does not happen often whatsoever. But this reliever Chivilli got up with Colorado, and I'm like, I don't know who you are.
You know what? With Amador up there now too, like I wouldn't rule anything out.
So, yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes. I think he does this year, as crazy as that sounds. Another guy that put together 2 excellent starts, and you texted me about, Trevor Martin with the Rays, Bowling Green. 2 starts, 11 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 18 Ks, and 3 walks. He's a bully. He's a big man, and this totally embodies that bully ball that I love talking about.
He was impressive when we saw him. And it's funny because it's low 90s, but this is another good characteristics guy. And then a couple secondaries, or 3 secondaries, but it's a couple breaking balls and then a changeup that's inconsistent that he mixes in. But what's funny is 14 of those strikeouts came in one outing. He faced Asheville twice, 7 innings, 14 Ks, then faced him again 5 days later, 4 2/3, a little bit of a shorter outing, but 1 earned run and 4 Ks. But I want to see him in double, see if the stuff plays the same. I don't think he's going to get as much swing and miss. I mean, this is a guy that's running a 31% K rate, 6% walk rate, though, which is really impressive. I think he looks like he could just be a solid depth arm, though. And I think he's got good enough stuff here.
2 lefties to wrap. Actually, 3 more arms, but 2 lefties that I really want to dive into the numbers on. Parker Messick is another guy that you've texted me about that I've been high on for a long time. Parker Messick with the Cleveland Guardians. I loved him when he was at Florida State. 2 starts, 10 1/3, 17 punch-outs, 4 walks this month so far. 12 starts with Lake County this year, a 3.48 ERA. He's punched out 75 in 62 innings. You think Messick's a big leaguer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I love you watch him, like the eye test wise, like he's just that pitchability lefty that just is satisfying and you know, he fills up the zone and you feel good about it. But then you look at the data. Usually guys like that, the data is going to be a little bit underwhelming. It's a low release, above average carry, and fills up the zone. So that fastball, even though it's only about 92 to 94, more closer to the 92, 93 range, it plays up from there. And then he's got a ridiculous changeup. I think that changeup is better than plus. And opponents are hitting $160 against it. So it's kind of your classic Guardians guy. Good fastball characteristics, great changeup off of that. The slider has not been there for him from a swing and miss perspective, but it is a good enough third pitch for him. I think he's just got to locate it better. And then he has a taste-breaking curveball. It's a 4-pitch mix. It's Logan Allen-esque to me. Like I think it's very similar to what they're getting from Logan Allen, which can be a guy that when it's not on, he's going to get bombed a little bit. Yeah. But at the end of the year, you're going to see a low fours. And sometimes when he's on, that fastball is just going to be an invisible, and he's going to give you some really good outings.
Yeah, I can really appreciate that comp. Two more guys. Former Cub, Jackson Ferris, left-hander with the Dodgers organization now. High A Great Lakes. It has not been a great year for him overall, but 2 really good starts. 2 starts in June, 10 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, 16 Ks, 4 walks. He's walking a lot. Hasn't walked a lot his last 2.
Yeah. I think and if you extend it to the last 4, it's been a stretch that all of a sudden is started to come together here. And, the Dodgers aren't miracle workers. Like they can't make a guy like Maddox Bruns throw more strikes or Ronan Kopp, like we've talked about. But Jackson Ferris seemed like he had a better chance to get there command wise than maybe some of those other guys. And it seems like he's starting to head in that direction. Also, they're stretching him out more. 80 plus. He didn't throw 80 pitches once last year. And he's now has 4 straight outings of 80 plus pitches. And his last time out, his fastball was up a tick, averaging 94.5. All things you love to see from a health and just preparedness standpoint and where his body's at. But then also with that, you have 16 Ks and those 4 walks, like you mentioned. It's never been a question about the stuff. Stuff is legit. He's 20 years old still too, so he's got plenty of time. 6'4" lefty. I think if the command continues to head in this direction, classic. But the Dodgers probably might have a guy here.
Yeah. Last guy that we got to talk about is a Cub who was really struggling at the complex, like hammered at the complex across 4 really short starts. But Jackson Wiggins, the right-hander, just got off the complex. He got to the beach, and as a Myrtle Beach Pelican, 2 starts, 6 innings combined. Again, they're keeping him short, understandably so. 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, no walks, 8 Ks, and he ran it up to
99 a ton. Like consistently touching 99. It was a handful of 99s, and he's averaging 97 and change over these 2 outings. It's not like he's throwing 20 pitches, it's 50 pitches. So, I think the velocity can hang around there, and it's been kind of climbing up too over the last few outings as he's just kind of getting back under him off of the TJ. He's 6'7". So, I mean, that fastball gets on you. Wiggins has good stuff. This is a name to watch. The slider is gross. And if he can throw more strikes, and we're seeing him start to do that, again, you can be patient with him considering he's coming off a TJ, but no walks in his last 2 outings. The complex, the problem was he was just shaking off the rust, a lot of walks. I think that was the issue. Seems like he's starting to come into his own here and feel like Jackson Wiggins again. It was a guy that would have been a top pick. And, he still was a high draft pick and an overslot guy. But, the results weren't there as much in college. This is a guy where you draft the stuff. And I think now we're seeing the stuff translate a little bit.
That's what I got.
Couple names real quick. Samuel Aldeguerri.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about him because I think the next system we're going to do is the Phillies. He doesn't quite make the cut because he didn't have a great outing from a run prevention standpoint the first time out this month. But then he comes back around and 6 shutty. 19 Ks over his last 11 innings. So it's really impressive. Only 3 walks. Lefty, 22 within the Phillies org with just good characteristics. Quinn Matthews had 1 bad high A start, and now he's just been lights out in the Cardinal system. The last few outings in high A, another really fun lefty. And then I think I had one more off the top of my head, but it's okay. We can circle back another time. But there's been a few guys that have started to really, really throw the ball well that we'll catch up on. We'll maybe do a more pitching focused episode, next week to really dive into more of those arms that we missed on. But I mean, it's harder when, like you said, they're throwing once or twice a week. Oh, Yaniel Correa. Another really good one. Ray system. 7 innings.
Hot rod or a biscuit right now?
He's a hot rod. 7 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 11 punchies. That will play.
I think the Rays are becoming my new favorite system.
Oh, that's what they do, man. Even when they get a little bit boring, they become fun again. Crazy. That's it for this episode, though. Hope you have a great weekend. For those that are subscribed to the bonus episodes, I will be putting out that bonus mailbag episode tomorrow where I'm answering all of your questions. So keep an eye out for that. If you want to subscribe to those bonus episodes, get a chance to get your questions answered. As we put out updates on prospect lists and all that good stuff. Click the link in the episode description. James Woodpiece is also there. Check out GameTime. Get the $20 off if you use our code for your first purchase there. That link is also in the episode description. Hope you have a great weekend. Monday's episode will be a little bit of us talking about some other performers, maybe on the pitching side, some other things, but we also have Walter Pennington from the Royals organization, who's been awesome this year in
Yeah,
AAA.
look at the numbers if you don't know who that is, and then go listen to it.
You'll be much more intrigued after you look at the numbers. And also engineer, pitcher, always a fun conversation when you have a guy like that on. He was a great interview as well. Look forward to talking prospects with you next week. Have a great weekend.